Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast on this Monday, Inauguration Day. It is finally here. We've been waiting for this for, I think it's been 4 years now that we've been waiting for this. So we're very excited. So excited to see Donald Trump and what he's going to do in his first 100 days. I absolutely cannot wait to see where this presidency goes on day one. So here we are. We are on day one, and to celebrate day one, we have Kyle Jennings with us. He is a country music singer and songwriter, small town stories. He has an affinity for the American way of life, which is why we thought this was a great day to talk about it. And Kyle, I hear that you have Michigan roots.
Oh yeah, I'm from Kalamazoo originally. Born and raised, grew up in the hockey world, went off and played some competitive hockey before essentially landing back in Michigan and then getting introduced to music, which I fell in love with, kind of transferred my passion from hockey into music and started making trips to Nashville. And the more I got invested, the more passionate I was. And so I made the move and really dug in.
So you love the American way of life. You seem like a really positive guy. Historically, we've always heard that country music songs are about like these hard times in life, but I mean, really kind of American life. So what drew you to that? I mean, it's just not the typical path for a Michigander, but what drew you to it?
Yeah, I believe me, I hear plenty of country music singer from Michigan. My upbringing, I grew up in a blue collar home. My dad was a builder and a teacher, and my mother was a homemaker and a nurse for a while. They both very hardworking. We were raised, my sister, my brother, and I, all raised with very blue collar American, self-reliant, accountable, roots. And so it's kind of, I think part of it's where you grow up, right? If you're from the city, you probably gravitate to living for the city. And I grew up in the country with blue collar Christian raising, and that's what I love. And I believe in that.
I mean, there's been a lot of music that has come out of Michigan, whether it is anything from Motown to country, Kid Rock. You've got Ted Nugent, you've got everybody, and now you've joined the list of some serious greats. So I always say Michigan can really do anything. We're a very unique state. People don't give us enough credit. So thank you for adding to a little bit to our flavor here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, when I got an opportunity to relocate back to Michigan, which was always my game plan. People would say, because Nashville's growing, it's bustling, everybody wants to be in Nashville. Why are you going to Michigan? And I would say, have you ever been?
Yeah.
And you say Michigan, folks go right to Detroit,
Right.
and they go
yes.
they go right to Detroit like 2004. They don't go to Detroit in Motown when the automobile empire was swinging and when Motown was big. I talk about all the state parks, all the trails and the topography. You've got hills, you've got valleys, rivers, streams, lakes. You got I say I've got the beach
Beaches.
an hour away.
Yeah.
People go, the beach?
I know, yes.
Yeah, have you heard of the Great Lakes? Large bodies of water, fresh water. So it's, you mentioned people, it's underrated. I kind of like it like that.
I know. So it was funny because when I was running for governor, people were like, please stop saying you're going to bring people to Michigan, because people here are very protective of what Michigan is. So you bring up the beaches, and we had a guy in Holland, Michigan for some event one time, and he was like, this is such a cute town. I don't really get the lighthouses thing. That seems a little bit off for Michigan. And I said, if you went a mile down the street, you would be at the beach. And people, unless they've seen the Great Lakes, they have no idea how incredible the Great Lakes actually are.
Yeah, the entire coast of Michigan is filled with these quaint little harbor towns that are vibrant and bustling in the summertime. I mean, I've been playing a little harbor town in South Haven for years. Folks are at the end of their wits by the time winter is done, and by the time you get that first 65, 70 degree day, South Haven is alive, and the the energy is so great because you only get 3 to 4 good months to spend your weekends in South Haven or these little harbor towns. So it's just an awesome 3 or 4 months. It's not redundant. You go down to, Fort Lauderdale, or you go down to, the Florida areas where it's always warm, and people just kind of go, well, this is what you get.
Yeah, right. Well, we were just talking about how cold it is in DC today and how cold it is for the inauguration. And I have to tell you that for Michigan people, I think they're going to be fine, because the other day I came into my neighborhood after work and there were kids. There's always kids out in the neighborhood. And I think that's another interesting thing about Michigan. No matter what time of year it is, there are always people out running, walking, riding their bikes. These kids were on scooters. But the most bizarre part about Michigan, there was snow on either side of the road. The grass is completely covered. Everybody's yard is covered in snow. They were in shorts with sweatshirts and no jackets. I'm like, that is Michigan. Exactly. I fight every day to get my kids to wear coats. I'm like, why will you not wear a coat?
Yeah. It's when I first moved to Nashville, the first year that I moved would have been 2002, and we got a pretty bad snowstorm. And the guy I was living with at the time was from Kansas, and so he was familiar with the Plain State drifts and driving in the snow. And we spent the whole day driving people to their apartments from the main road, because they just think if you push the pedal down harder, it's supposed to go faster, and it doesn't. They're just, it's a different way of life.
Right. If you've never lived snow, then it is really different. My sister, she is down in Florida now, and she was like, there's kids in my daughter's class who have never seen snow in their life. And if you've never seen it and you try to drive in it, it is definitely a different experience. So I'm sure everyone in DC right now is trying to figure out cold, especially those people who have not come from places like Michigan. But I want to get into your whole career. I know that you played hockey. I mean, for people here, obviously, that's kind of a staple. I think a lot of people who have girls are playing. Almost every family I know that has boys, their boys play hockey. Hockey's a staple. But then this transition into singing, and how did you do that? And how did you have your own label? You've become very successful. You've been out there on Fox News. I mean, people love what you're doing. So how did you do that? Inspire us a little here.
Well, I think really it was just stubbornness. I was not willing to give up. I started making trips to Nashville. I was in way over my head. I knew a guy in town. So I played the competitive hockey thing. That was all I ever wanted to do. I got my head bounced around a few times to the point where I remember, I think it was the third or fourth concussion of the season. And this would have been 97 or 8. We didn't really know as much as we know now. So I remember my dad looking at me and saying, how long are you going to do this? Because I love to play. I love the physical side of the sport. Physics were not on my side. You go into a corner with a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", 220. When you're 5'8", 170, 175, math is not on your side. So, I was living in my grandfather's house. I found a guitar under his bed. I knew a guy in town that knew how to play the guitar. So I had him teach me some chords, where to put my fingers. That's really was kind of the genesis of getting started, and then just being unwilling.
How old were you when you found this guitar?
22.
Oh my word, that's real. I mean, that is inspiring, because I think a lot of people feel like once you've graduated from high school that you're kind of set in your ways and music is not a thing. So that's impressive.
It's music is it's such a vast and deep and wide ocean. It can be a little overwhelming, but just like anything else, you stay at it and it becomes a little easier, and you never master it. I don't think it's anything you ever master. I've had a number of friends say they wanted to start to play the guitar and they don't stick with it very long. Their fingers hurt. I'm like, well, that gets better. It's gonna, you're gonna figure that out. But music is magic, truly.
And maybe that's the joy of it, because if you don't master it, there's no destination. It's the journey, and the journey just continues.
Well, the journey is something else. The music has taken me places I never would have maybe gone on my own, couldn't afford to go to. I've gotten to play the Pentagon. Never would have played there. We used to go down to a club and play down on Duval Street in Key West like once every 3 months. They were hiring us to come down. not a hard duty to get a band to say, hey, we're going to go down. Do you guys want to go down to the Keys for a week and play country music? Not difficult to persuade guys for that.
So how did you, I mean, you said you were just persistent, but there has to be some tricks that got you there. And what do you think resonates the most with people? You are independent. You have a strong faith. How do you bring people to the table? Is it because that inspiration is there and there's just a blessing in the journey?
Yeah, I think anything that people pursue that's difficult, you have a passion that drives you, and then you moving to Nashville. Everybody always said you got to move to Nashville, and you don't really understand what that means until you get there. But that's where everyone goes to live that life. It's eat, sleep, breathe, and live in it. And you build a constituency, a network of people that do the same thing you do. You build friendships, and a lot of times those friendships pick you up when you're in a bad place. You'll have somebody call you, you'll have somebody reach out, and it's just like life. You got people in your life for a reason. They help keep you motivated when there's times you don't want to be motivated, and you just kind of forge through, and those are the times that really make you who you are.
So you said you've sung at the Pentagon. Now we know that Carrie Underwood is singing today. She is singing America the Beautiful at the inauguration. She's received tremendous backlash for this. And I think a lot of people have said, how is it that you can sing at such an important moment in the country's history, no matter who the president is? This is a moment that it does go down in history, and it will, whatever this term brings, there will be a definition to certain things that happen in America from now on because Donald Trump will be inaugurated today. So when you see her being attacked over this, what's your reaction to that?
I mean, you expect it. You've seen it for, the last however many years that the left especially just tries to destroy anybody that dissents from whatever their ideology is. Kudos to Carrie. She's such a class act. She's got strong conviction in her faith. She's a stratospherical talent. But kudos to her for having the courage because, as you mentioned, she's already received backlash. That's going to continue. But I think she's helping to forge a new path too for other artists. It's just like the dance floor. Nobody wants to get on the dance floor, and you get one person on the dance floor. You have the very shy Ted Nugent, and you have the guys like Kid Rock and other artists that are willing to put their neck out there. But then in the wake of that, you get guys like Jason Aldean that kind of emerge. Obviously Toby Keith, wasn't afraid to be that guy. But then you bring a whole new class of conservative, I think, with Carrie Underwood. She's just a classy, that's kind of what really personifies her brand. So I think it's a great thing for her. I think it's a great thing for conservatism. I think it's a great thing for the Trump, presidency, obviously, to align themselves with that brand. And I think it's a great thing.
It's interesting that you say that because being bold in this time is challenging. And I think we saw a lot of that in the past year, but people have been cautiously bold when it comes to conservatism because there has been such a vicious attack. And we saw even the weaponization of government. We saw the weaponization of social media, even against parents who were getting kicked out of their accounts. And it's been a challenge. It's interesting because when you see Beyonce and Taylor Swift and all these people come out without any fear of saying, hey, I support Kamala Harris, and nothing seems to happen. You don't have, last night I was reading that Carrie Underwood has had 1 million people unfollow her and they won't listen to her music, and they're out there talking about it. And, maybe that happened when Taylor Swift came out, but I don't remember that happening. I don't remember conservatives saying, if you're not on our side, we want nothing to do with you. And I think, I have seen occasionally conservatives that are like, oh, go out and cancel. Obviously, there was the Target situation. I think that was different. It wasn't like we're never shopping at Target again. We want you to know that we don't like you to thumb your nose at our values, but certainly not that we don't want you at all around ever again. And Carrie, I think she had a good response to this. She said, I love our country and am honored to have been asked to sing at the inauguration and to be a small part of this historic event. I'm humbled to answer the call at a time when we must all come together in the spirit of unity and looking to the future. Do you think that's what we're going to start seeing from now on, is people saying, you know what, maybe we should come together?
I think we've already seen it. I think we're already seeing that paradigm shift in, kind of the cultural climate. You're seeing, like, Joe Scarborough, you saw, and his co-host made the trip to Mar-a-Lago, which they received immense backlash for. But you're just seeing the general tone of the response of Donald Trump and how people are handling their response of, his presidency, and his public engagement seems to be completely different. So it'll be interesting to see, as his presidency unfolds, how that's weighed. Obviously, The View hasn't really changed course very much, but who really expected that? But I think you're already seeing it. And look, I think over the course of the 8 years from his presidency through the 4 years of Biden, you've watched the media really try to just destroy this guy. And
Yeah.
I think even the constituents who align maybe with the liberal political ideology, maybe a percentage of them have stepped back and gone, man, it sure seems like this whole witch hunt thing, maybe there's something to it. And as that's kind of unraveled through his reelection, it seems like they're starting to kind of read the tea leaves. So,
I mean, even when you look at what shows are resonating, you've got people watching things like Yellowstone and Landman. And then there was that clip about I think it was the windmills that went viral from Landman, where he's talking about, you have no idea what you're talking about. You can't get away from oil. And just the lack of knowledge of what these resources actually do. But the fact that now that's being called out even from Hollywood. And then a couple weeks ago, I had someone from Hollywood say, you know what, it's interesting because Hollywood right now is reaching out to people and saying, you got anything faith-based? Because faith films are really selling right now. And we had someone on the podcast who kind of studies culture, and they said that this latest Generation Alpha, is really, and even I guess Gen Z and Alpha are really kind of heading back toward faith and pulling out Bibles, and young people are seeking God. But then that generation that is in high school going into college right now, those kids are actually seeking out like traditional Latin masses and really seeking that higher power, which I find interesting that seems to have kind of happened on its own. I've watched it with my own daughter. The algorithm on social media, parents are all afraid of social media, but she has been looking at faith-based sayings and faith-based clothing and things like that. And she kind of continues to get bombarded with those messages. Hey, kids like this, we're going to keep pushing it. They've seemed to be led back to that in unusual ways through social media, where we thought social media was really bad, but now people are seeking God.
Yeah, who knew the Holy Spirit was on social media? Weird. That's
Right.
crazy. At the end of the day, I think just what we just talked about with some of the consistent rhetoric from the media, they were hammering, trying to sell a manufactured narrative. And what I think a lot of people have realized, that there have not been digesting and being delivered the truth. And so regardless of what side of the aisle, I think we've got to get back to a society of seeking to find the truth. What is the truth? And, that's where the truth road leads to, is at the feet of Jesus, at Christianity. And so I think that's a great sign for society. If our younger generations, I think maybe on the back of getting delivered this manufactured narrative of trying to manipulate information from the media, they're trying to manipulate a certain way. I think the general masses are realizing, we're not getting the truth from media. I'm going to have to seek something else. And that's pushed people into a search for something much more important and much greater than just Yellowstone or Landman. So I think that's a very positive thing, especially for the younger generations.
But it's interesting that as it pushes people toward that Hollywood is scrambling to try to provide what they're looking for, which is fascinating to me because, right. But also interesting how God works in this moment, because the people that probably need to study God the most are the ones who now will be doing that by bringing people to stories of faith. Because if you create a story of faith, you have to be pretty heavily involved in how did you get there. And I mean, people who have even remember the story of Unbroken, when Angelina Jolie worked on that film, you saw kind of a transformation of how she saw his faith. And she talked about, I was really, amazed by how his faith had gotten him through that situation where he came back from World War II and was broken, but obviously unbroken because of his relationship with God. Hollywood, so Reuters put out this article. It says Hollywood embraces God and that cowboy curious to broaden their audience. So I find that fascinating too, because we've gone through years now of the story of toxic masculinity, and we don't want these powerful men who are the leaders of their family, who will take care of women. And I've thought, what a disaster for men and women both, because I have seen women, and I'm sure you've seen this too, women who have had doors open for them and they're horrified. Don't you dare. Don't you open my car door. Don't you treat me like I can't do things for myself. But that really is a sign of respect. There was a respect between men and women. And I think that cowboy culture kind of brings that back.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we're a unique culture in that aspect, is that we celebrate and we truly do, like at our forefront, we protect women. And the feminist movement has taken women back in that regard for all of the wrong reasons, for just kind of emotional, narratives, not any reality to it. So yeah, it's a great thing to see. I dare say I don't digest a lot of TV, so I've never seen Yellowstone. I've never seen Landman. That shocks a lot of people. But at the root of it, what you're talking about, the chivalry, the old fashioned traditional values of man leading in his home, it does not take away from what women offer to the household. I used the analogy one time. I was having a discussion with somebody about this, and I said, I can drive a nail with a pipe wrench, and women can do this, a lot of the same things men can do. That's not what they're designed for, and men aren't designed to do certain things. We can certainly help to raise and nurture children, but that's not that's not what I was designed to do. So, having both of those aspects in a mutual relationship working together, that's how we're designed.
Well, and I think there's been this confusion where it's like, if a woman is able to do those things, then she should have this dominant role. And regardless of what you can do physically, or whether or not you're better at fixing a hole in the wall or getting the hinge on the door just correct, there is still a relationship between men and women, that a partnership that people are afraid to acknowledge today. That there are times when, as a woman, I just want to fall into my husband's arms and let him, feel that embrace. And my husband doesn't need that. It's a different relationship. He needs to be the person that's protecting me. He doesn't need to be the person who's protected. Those are natural. That's a natural feeling. And it's a good place to be, to have that relationship. It's not weakening a woman. And I think when you brought up the feminist movement, that was not how it started. When you had Ruth Bader Ginsburg fighting for women's rights, it was so that women could walk into a courtroom. I mean, what I saw with Pam Bondi this past week and her facing these people in these hearings, I watched that and I said to myself, there are so few times today that I see a woman who walks into a room and is so powerful and with such grace, that doesn't feel like she has something to prove, that just exudes confidence and ability. I watched that and I thought to myself, I want my 4 girls to sit down and watch how Pam Bondi handled this, because she is a role model for what feminism truly is. She goes in there and she's powerful, but she's graceful and she's beautiful. And she just came off with such power and dignity without coming off as she didn't need anybody else. There was something about that power in that room that was very sensitive and beautiful at the same time as being powerful.
This goes into the conversation I have oftentimes when there's the political discourse begins. I don't know anybody that I think of that I know where I have conversations like this, where they truly think like on a conservative framework, go, well, women aren't qualified, or a woman of color or whatever aren't qualified. Most of the people that I know, they say whoever is the most qualified, regardless of what their sex, gender, heritage, background, ethnicity, whatever that is, which is what I think of when I think of Condoleezza Rice. You look at somebody that's incredibly well-spoken, very intelligent, articulate, deep in the knowledge of her expertise. Nobody looks at that and goes, well, that's great that she's got those qualifications, but these things, detract from her ability to execute.
Well, I think that's actually why people have been so upset about DEI, because DEI created this space where people went, wait a minute, are you qualified, or did you just get this position because of what you look like? And from my perspective, as a woman who came out of the steel industry and honestly walked into plenty of rooms where men went, I don't know how I feel about you being here, and had to prove myself, I don't want people, whether it is a woman or a person of color or whoever it is, to ever walk into a room and have the people in that room automatically think in their head, did you get hired because you had to fill a quota? And I think I don't think that was foreseen. I don't think that's what people intended when they created DEI. That is what was created. And that's why I'm so happy to see all of these companies say, man, this was a mistake. It actually didn't help. It hurt people more than we could have foreseen. And I think women and people of color it's going to be probably 5 to 10 years before we can get past that image in people's minds when we walk in a room that we are just the DEI hire. I mean, I've had people say it about me on Twitter. I know other people of color who have had that's said about them on X and on all these platforms. And it immediately takes any credibility out of your sales. And you go, gosh, no, that's not why I was chosen to do this. And I think that it's amazing to see how that was turned around, and people like Pam and people like Condoleezza are going out there and still speaking and out there publicly. People look at them and go, wow, actually, especially with Pam Bondi, Donald Trump chose her because she is on fire. This woman is incredible. There's no DEI here. This was the right person for the job. That's not how you felt when Joe Biden was in office, and the people he was choosing, they were not the right person for the job. They were, I guess, what it would be central casting for the leftists. But right now, I think we see people who really are qualified.
Yeah. Well, the other thing DEI does, it robs someone from the value of the role. Instead of accomplishing this role and being hired because of your qualifications, now you've been basically gifted the role because we're going to pander to you. We feel sorry for you, or we're trying to fill a slot here, for our lineup. And you just happen to fit some racial profiles that we'd like to fill in and install in our portfolio, our employment portfolio. And it robs women from the acknowledgement of in roles like you're just talking about. From looking at Pam Bondi and saying, wow, she was appointed because she must be a highly intellectual, well-qualified, articulate, powerful human being, But it has been great to see. I mean, obviously there's some outliers, but folks on both sides of the aisle who have come out and said she's an accomplished woman. She is the right person for this job. We are impressed with what she's been able to do as the Attorney General of Florida, and to come into the U.S. government and take on that role would be incredible. And to your point, I think that too often times now that this DEI has occurred, and now that people have this concern in their minds when they look at you, there is nothing worse than having someone look at you with pity because they don't know if you should be where you are. And I mean, I think everybody who is considered a DEI hire these days has had that experience where it's like, are you really there? Are you really the person that's right for this? And
I'm glad that Donald Trump has pushed back on that and proven that people, no matter what they look like, there are people that can do any role and be successful at it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the whole. I think that's the whole point about the free trade capitalist system is it allows the person who has acquired the most qualifications and is the best person for the job to have the opportunity to succeed, and it allows under that system allows anybody, regardless of your background. I mean, JD Vance is a tremendous story. You know, to look at his background, what he's accomplished, where he's come from, and then where he is now. You know, the manner in which he carries himself, I think, is so valuable. Going back to the younger generation, here's a guy who was a champion of conservatism, but is a pretty good disconnect from what Donald Trump is. I mean, he compliments him very well, classy, well spoken, very patient, and well calculated in what he does when he engages with people. I mean, the one thing that I noticed about the debates was with JD Vance specifically was that when he lays out his point, it seems like the other side is willing to receive that and kind of concede and go, you know what? That's an interesting point. And it's not like this, you know, somebody may lay out a point because they're so hyper partisan on the right, and you inflame, and then it just goes back and forth. Reagan was great at this. Reagan was great at making you smile, bringing you in with humor, and then laying out the punchline, which was usually very pro-conservative. But it even made, you know, you look at Mondale on those debates, and when Reagan made that classic quip about, I will not exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience. Yeah. Yeah. And even Mondale, they panned to Mondale. Even Mondale's laughing. You know, I think there's an element of that in JD Vance, which is just awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that what I've seen, I even in the past week with these hearings, you've seen some folks who have tried to up the rhetoric and get some jabs in, maybe get a viral moment. They haven't really received what I think they wanted. I think it's been the people that Trump has brought in, they're serious, they're focused, they're professional. I think JD Vance, what you were saying, yes, he was very professional. He came out as a true leader in those debates. And so I'm excited about what we're going to see today. I'm excited about the next 100 days, but I certainly am excited about the next 4 years. But you have a lot coming up too. So before I let you go, I want you to tell us what's going on in the next few months, what's happening. You've got some concerts. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, summer's going to be busy. I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling. I'm going to be all over the place. People can check out dates at kylejenningsmusic.com. For the last few years, we've been recording 4 songs in the spring and rolling those out kind of throughout the summer just to stay active and keep delivering new music. And, you know, that's kind of the plan for me is new music in the spring, travel and shows through the summer. And I'm excited for the first 100 days too. I'm excited for today. It feels like a completely different climate. So yes. It'll be interesting to see, you know, how he's able to bipartisanly accomplish things that maybe otherwise in the first term or, he wasn't able to do.
Yep, I agree. I can't wait. And I think that God had a plan, the way he spread this out and separated it.
And he's always on time, you know, so it's like,
right.
If it's meant to be, you know, you can't stop it. And if it wasn't meant to be, you can't force it. It's just fun to sit back and watch things unfold and know that he's always on time.
That's right. Absolutely. Kyle Jennings, thank you so much for being on today and sharing with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great to be here.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us the next time. Have a blessed day.